Hi, I'm Chris Cunneen, and I'm one of the co-editors of the International Handbook on Decolonising Justice. I'm also the author of a chapter, State Terror, Resistance and Community Solidarity. The chapter explores the background to the current demands to defund the police, specifically in the US, Britain and Australia. The historical fragments that I provide are stories of activism from the late 1960s. I look at the formation of the American Indian movement, the Black Panther movement in the US, and the Black Power movement in Australia, as examples of First Nations and black movements for autonomy, self-defence and self-determination, which emerged alongside protecting local communities from police violence. In Britain, the struggle against police violence was important and certainly is reflected in the work of some of the great black scholars and activists like Stuart Hall, Paul Gilroy and Stephen Andon, who recognised that the story of black struggles has almost always been the story of confrontations with police. I developed this argument for several reasons. Perhaps the most obvious is the ubiquity of targeted police violence against black, Indigenous and people of colour. Importantly, however, for contemporary political struggles is the focus in earlier movements on solidarity making in the community. Activist movements linked their work against police terror with organising and providing services for local communities, including healthcare, education, childcare, housing and employment. Furthermore, the struggle against police violence gave rise to new forms of community-based organisations and resistance. Some interventions used the legal system for political struggle, for example using criminal trials as political platforms, while at the same time mobilising community support and protest outside the legal system. As Paul Gilroy noted, this combination of tactics and the synchronisation of protest inside and outside the law provided a model for what was to become central to the activist repertoire. Some of the movements were also abolitionist. Further, there's been continuity in community organising and activism which often reflected a black or Indigenous feminist politics. The campaigns for justice after state killings have been mostly led by black and Indigenous women. The earlier movements also provided a critique of reformism, programmatic solutions to violence and racism through police training or through community policing, which was never more than a complementary strategy to growing police militarism, was seen as futile. Finally, although generated through local activism and resistance, there was also an outward vision that was focused on oppression more generally. The movements understood that colonialism was a core structure that underpinned police violence and saw themselves as part of an internationalist movement. Thank you.